Mindset is the reason why your diet isn't working. And this is how we're going to solve it. So diet is one of those things where people are always looking for a new diet. And I often tell people that it's not a better diet that they need. They just need to stick to the diet that they're already using or they're on, and they need to stop eating junk. But often what gets in the way of people and their diet is their mind frame. Now, most people have heard of the be, do, have formula for success. Now, if you haven't heard of it, that's okay. I'm going to write it at the top. Be plus do equals have. Be is who are you being on a day-to-day basis. So let's relate it to the area of health and fitness. So are you being a healthy person? Are you doing daily actions that make you healthy? So it's who you become, that the person who is does the actions. So for example, if you are a healthy person, if you act that out every day, if you like training, if you like physical activity, then those actions that are going to flow from that are going to be that you're probably going to go to the gym, you're going to do your grocery shopping, and that you're going to prepare healthy food. From doing those things, from being that person who is healthy and enjoys training and physical exercise, you do the actions. If you plus those together, you get a result. You get the have. You have a great body. You have great energy. Likewise, if you're someone who is unhealthy, then the actions that person does is they might smoke, they might drink, they don't put any time or care into shopping and also food preparation. Now, as a result, if you plus those two things together, you get a very different outcome. Now, I love the be, do, have formula, but there is another level to this that I love even more. And that's the pyramid of change, which was taught to me by a friend of mine, Dwayne Alley. Now, at the base of this pyramid, we have our environment. So I want you to think of the environment as basically your have, right? So at the top of the pyramid, we have our identity. Then below that, in also making up the B aspect, is our beliefs and values. So if we put a cap around those two, that is our B. Now, the do aspect. Do is a very interesting one because often people, it does rely somewhat on your skills and skill sets. So for example, if you don't know how to cook, then preparing food is going to be pretty hard, right? You might want to cook, but you don't know actually how to cook, which then prevents you from cooking or cooking tasty meals that you actually want to eat. And then you realize, well, that's too hard. I'm just going to go out and buy it, which then prevents you from getting the results. So this aspect is made upon two things, which is your skills and skill sets. And ultimately those skills and skill sets translates into behavioral change. And so that's your do aspect. Now let's break this up even a little bit further. So with identity, it's often a label that we give ourselves. So we might say that I am a healthy person, or we might say I'm a personal trainer, or I'm a business person, or I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm a mother, I'm a father. With these labels always comes a connotation or a stereotype, which often creates an invisible prison for us. So let's just say, for example, I'm an entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, I'm going to prioritize business over my health, getting stuff done over sleep. So in that, you need to create space to be healthy and to see how health translates to you doing work more effectively, to being a better business owner, to being more creative, to helping you structure your day so that you actually find time and can actually produce and look after your business, but also look after yourself. And you can apply this to anything, whatever the statement I am, enter, whatever that statement is that you identify with, it ultimately keeps you trapped. Now, identities can be very empowering or they can be very disempowering, or sometimes they're neither. They just keep us stuck to a certain way. But what comes out of an identity is our beliefs and values. Now, values are usually derived from our voids. So what we seek as missing, what we see as missing. From our voids, we create our values. Once something becomes valuable to us, or we deem it as valuable as that's the way people should act, is we derive our judgments. So I'll give you an example. Same event, two different perspectives. Say you're working at a gym. If you go for after work gym drinks, why would you do that? That's viewed as something very negative. You don't drink alcohol after work. You don't need to drink. You go to the gym after work. You train hard. You look after yourself. You eat right. In corporate culture, after work drinks are encouraged. If you don't go to after work drinks in corporate culture, then you're being anti-social. You don't want to get to know the team. You're not one of us. Same thing, but the value and the judgment of it is very different based on a healthy view of the gym person versus the corporate culture. So from our identity of what we identify as, we derive judgments and we label them as good as bad. It was John Mayer in his song Belief, where he wrote the lyric, "Belief makes for the most beautiful armor, but for the heaviest sword." So what that basically means, and I think it's a beautiful line that really for me encapsulates beliefs, is that belief protects us. Our beliefs protect us from the world. If you say, I'm a vegan, then you put on this beautiful armor that people say, oh, veganism isn't scientific and all this kind of stuff. It protects you, but it also makes for a heavy sword that you're not really able to fight a good argument back to that because you're so entrenched in this belief. It doesn't really serve as a weapon. And obviously you can look at religions across the world around beliefs where people ascribe themselves to a belief system, and it creates an invisible prison for the way they think about certain issues, which then does also transcend into their identity. So beliefs and values is certainly around the B aspect. Now, in this video, and obviously I'm not in the business of trying to make you change your religion or any of that kind of stuff, but what I do want you to use your belief and identity is around your health and fitness and identifying yourself as a healthy person who eats healthy foods that builds and nourishes your body. So downward from beliefs and values, we have our skills and skill sets. So this is where often, like at skills and skill sets level, you might see the fat personal trainer or the fat nutritionist or the overweight naturopath. You might say, well, they know all the skills and skill sets. They have the tools. Why aren't they getting the results? Why aren't they using those results? And usually the answer to that is usually a belief in value or an identity shift that needs to take place in their own psyche to actually use and utilize those skills and skill sets. The thing with change is change will always flow down the pyramid, seldomly ever flow up the pyramid. So in saying that, we certainly want to focus on skills and skill sets because that is going to be the capacity or the roof, or the ceiling rather, of which our behaviors are going to reach to. Again, I use the example at the start of this video about cooking. If you have the skills and skill sets to prepare your own food, that is going to give you a higher likelihood to create a positive behavior that is going to get reinforced, because ultimately we like doing behaviors that we're good at and also get rewarded by. So skills and skill sets, it behooves you to learn things around shopping, training, nutrition, supplementation, so you can do those things, because that's going to then be in the do aspect, that's going to flow onto your behaviors. That's going to enable the positive behaviors of what to do. And those behaviors, ultimately, if we just work with someone on a behavioral level, it can be very superficial. And this is why I don't just like working on behaviors, because if you look at behaviors on their own, it's really just saying to someone, do a whole list of different things, or behaviors in our environment can kind of flow into each other. If you take the example of The Biggest Loser, right? The Biggest Loser, hit TV show, people would often, you take people with very unhealthy behaviors and environments, you take them out of one environment and you pop them into another, which is contrived and controlled with controlled amounts of food, starvation, all this kind of excessive training. And it's purely an environmental shift. Now, in that environmental shift, people obviously lose weight and they lose body fat and they get a result. But often, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a lawsuit a little while ago where the participants sued the production team for putting the weight back on once they got into the real world. So what I would say, I'm not here to make a judgment on that, but what I would say on that is that's a classic example of taking someone, just working on the environment without addressing someone's identity. And that's ultimately when you take that person and you just plop them inside a different environment and you force them to change, they're going to change to a degree, but when you take them out of that environment and put them back into their own environment, if you haven't changed the hardware inside of their brain, they're going to go back to doing what they know how to do, because you haven't changed an identity, you haven't changed their beliefs and values, you haven't given them new skill sets, which then transitions to behaviors, which then creates a new environment. So again, key concept here is at the top of the pyramid, the identity, the beliefs and values is our B aspect. We got to become the person who is healthy, that enjoys training, that eats healthy foods, that build and nourish our body, that makes us energized. The do aspect is the skills and behaviors, the skills and skill sets and behaviors that gets us to do the right actions. To do those actions, it's not just about doing those actions for 1 or 2 days or a couple of weeks. You want the fuel to do those actions for the rest of your life. And that's with a B. You need to plus that B in with the do. When you do those two and you continue to do those two without necessarily looking for a reward, so to speak, you're going to have the result. You're going to have the change in your environment. You can put this formula over any area, any aspect of life, this success formula, basically, and you'll see that it makes sense on so many levels. My name is Mark Ottobre, owner and founder of Enterprise Fitness. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to us on YouTube, and hey, if you're looking for help with your diet and your health and fitness and training regime, want to get some results, reach out to us. It's melbournepersonaltrainers.com or just simply Google Enterprise Fitness. Till I see you on the next video, make sure you train hard, eat well, and supplement smart.